Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to a new playthrough on the channel. After our adventures in the German Night Fighter last week, we're actually going back into our American Interceptor this week as we play Defending America, Intercepting the Amerika Bombers from Compass Games. For a little bit of backstory on this one, the Germans have actually won the war in Europe at this point, and now they're turning their attention to the United States. They have a forward base in the Azores under pressure from Portugal, so that's what they're using to attack. That's what the Germans are using to attack the United States mainland. So that's what we'll be doing tonight. I think everything's all set. We've got our Wildcat over here, which is the plane that we're starting in, with our Endurance and our Wingmans currently present. So, with that, we're all set for tonight's sorties, so let's jump right in. I'm going to make some notes here. I'm just making sure. Let's see, I'm based on the USS Saipan. Okay. Now that I've got all that sorted out, I'm going to get a surface that I can write on a little bit better. Okay. So first thing we need to do is we need to roll for the target. We'll be on table A1. So this is the table we'll be on as we roll for the interception, as we roll for the raid. We'll be rolling on April to June 1947, and we'll be rolling our dice APA style. So we'll be reading black as our tens digit, white as our ones. Let's see where the Germans are targeting tonight. First, I should say. All right, an 11 means that they're going after Alice Chalmers in Boston, Massachusetts. That will be Zone 5. Which it might be hard to see, but that's also where we're based. So now we'll be starting on. So now we start rolling for interception at this point, and we roll. Let's see. Okay. So the raid moves to Zone 1. We can decide if we want to take off. In this case, we're not going to. So the raid will move to Zone 2, and at this point, I think we will lift. Right, I think I need another. There should be an F4. Oh, it's over here. So we're based there. We are going to lift off in Zone 2. Which costs us a turn to get airborne. Yes, and that'll also cost us a box of fuel endurance. Okay. So the raid will move into Zone 3. We are going to move to try to meet them, I think, yes. We're going to move to try to meet them, which will spend another unit of fuel. Then the raid will move into Zone 4, so now we'll have to roll for interception, and for that we'll be rolling on the interception table for April to June 1947. That's a 2d6 roll. That's a 5, so we make contact with an ME-364. Okay, so that will bring us to the position map. We'll get that out of the way for the time being. So I'm trying to bring the position chart in shot right there. Okay. Now we have to roll for where we're approaching from. We'll need a D10 for that. And I believe it's a D... Yep. D10 for location, D6 for the range in case we don't get vertical climb or vertical dive. All right, so we are approaching from approach 7, which looks like it's going to be port behind the port wing. So we'll be approaching that. And the 2 says we're coming at it from low. There should be a chit in here. Bear with me while I see if there's a chit for altitude in here as well. There should be, though. We've got current endurance already, which is on the which is on the plane. But now I need to find this. There should be an altitude chit in here somewhere. It's not going to be in here, but I also want to see if there's a separate chit in here for... Oh, there's an ME-364, which we can use to mark off the plane that we're after, but that's still not the altitude chit that I'm after. Unless I already pulled it out and I didn't think I needed it. It's not there. It's ranks. Nope. That's a weapon unlocked. That's also not what I'm looking for. Oh, I didn't even mark off the ammo. I guess I'm a little scatterbrained tonight, to put it mildly. 2, 4, and 6. It's going on the plane, but that's also not answering the question of where the altitude chit is. Usually I keep the altitude chit in with whatever the stuff is for my active campaign. It looks like it's all ranks, bases, and extra box and extra bases. USS Saipan. That's our base once again. That is actually moderately annoying. Ace status, that's not what I want. Well, okay, we'll improvise here a little bit. So I'm just going to grab another chit here to indicate that when it's on this side, the blank side, that's low. When it's not present, medium. And on the gun jam side, on the map, on the position chart, it'll be high. Incoming hits is for how many we've got coming in. There's normally a, let's see, B-10 bomber map. ME-36, oh, okay, here it is. So we've got an ME-364 for a damage chart. That's where the incoming hits go. Okay, that makes more sense. That still doesn't solve the... Right. So we'll do approach 1. So we're at approach 7 low. Then we'll designate our aim point. We'll aim at the... We can either aim at the wing or the airframe, and I think we're going to aim at the airframe. All right, so we have our long-range attack. That'll take a point from our ammo, and based on the firepower that we're putting at it, which is 6 power, we'll roll on this fighter damage chart to bombers or fighters. Since we're using 6 power, we'll roll the 2 dice. We'll roll 2d6, and we'll match the result. So we'll walk through this one slowly. Let me see if I can bring the tower. We'll put the tower here for the time being. Alright, so rolling the 2d6. This is at long range. A 10 on the chart means we go to 6. We go to 6 on the fighter damage chart, drop down to a die roll of 10, and we'll see a 4, which means we've scored 4 hits on that ME-364. Does damage modifiers by approach, we're at low altitude, these are all by close range. Okay, so we're at long range right now, which means we have... So we score our normal 4 hits. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that will move us over to this bomber random damage chart for the number of hits that we scored. So since we're aiming at the airframe, we'll roll 4d10 and we'll get 4 random hits out of that. An 8 on an airframe hit is going to take us to engine on the port side. So we'll get a damaged, and that's port, so port engine. Looks like we have to roll for outboard, center, or... Looks like we have to roll for port, or for outboard, center, or inboard. We'll roll a 2d6, 1 to 2 outboard, 3 to 4 center, 5 to 6 inboard. That's a 2, so we're damaging the outboard engine. Then we'll roll for our next hit. A 0 is a 10, that's a Bombay hit, which means we need to roll for... I believe a Bombay hit may cause a detonation and requires a 2d6 roll. Okay, so I'll go get a damage marker for the Bombay. There should be a mark for that as well. Apparently not. So we'll just roll for the Bombay hit to see if we nail it. So the first one was ended up being the outboard port engine. And I believe combat is considered to be simultaneous, so even if we knock out the bomber here, even if we knock out the bomber, it was attacked in the target zone for its rate, except we attacked it in zone 4. So combat is... Okay. Doesn't say if combat is considered to be simultaneous, which at long range the interceptor generates 1 less random hit, so we do only get the 3 hits on that. I don't think it's considered to be not random, simultaneous, so I'm going to rule that it's not. But we do have a Bombay hit that we have to roll for here. On a 2 to 9, no effect. But it'll be an airframe hit. 10 to 12, explosion, bomber goes toodaloo, but we have to check for damage. That's an 11, so the ME-364 is destroyed. So what did we say the target was? Alice Chambers was Boston. So we have an ME-364, which we nailed. And we'll get one more hit. Technically we'll get one more hit, but we have to check for damage. We have to check for damage on our craft. Five is going to be a controls hit, but that won't matter because, as I mentioned, we just took out this ME-364. So 5 was a controls hit. But we do have to roll for damage, which I would assume damage just happens. So that will send us to the fighter damage chart here, which we will be rolling APA style. .24 is an oxygen hit. Good thing we were going to be turning around and heading for home anyway. So oxygen, what does that do? Does that require us? Must break off if possible after the current pass and land immediately. Well, we were going to be breaking off and landing anyway. So we'll move back to zone 5, losing another unit of fuel. And then we'll roll for the weather, which the weather is on a... There should have been a... Oh, here we go. Weather landing chart. So we're rolling a D10 for the weather. Which could make landings harder on the landing chart. That's a 3, so weather is good as we're trying to land this bird. So, good weather. And now we're looking at a 2d6 roll to try to put this thing on the ground. We are trying to land on a carrier, so we do have a +1 modifier to land. That's a 7 + 1 is 8. We've got a good landing. Nicely done. Okay. Alright, so at the end of the mission, I believe we should pick up 1 experience for the... We should pick up 1 experience, I believe 1 for going out, and another for destroying the bomber that we were attacking. Right. Oh yeah, so actually for 7.8, actually that doesn't completely tell me what we gain for experience here. So post-combat, which we've all done that. Landing, we already landed. Didn't need to parachute to safety. We get the... Okay, so we do get the Bronze Star for downing an enemy craft. Let me see if I can fish out the Bronze Star here. Ah, here we are. So there's our Bronze Star, and that will give us a prestige point, which we can potentially spend for upgrades. So there's our first prestige point. Do we get any other awards? This is our 3rd sortie. We'll be on our last one of April shortly. Awarded to an American... We're a U.S. Navy pilot, so Nothing doing there. Okay. And no. Okay, so... Nope. Okay, looks like we are all clear there. Also places the Bronze Star in his uniform. That doesn't completely explain what happens with the experience. But maybe it's somewhere in... For every 3 sorties skilled, or 3 sorties flown, pilot gains an experience point. So we will gain 1 XP for flying our 3rd sortie. But I don't think... Geez... I think we're gonna go... We can use the experience point to buy skills, but we're gonna pass on that for now. So we'll get ready for our last sortie in April 1947. So we'll bring the tower into shot. Get everybody back to base. Okay, let's see where we're targeting this time. '21. This time the Germans are going after Bosch and Lahm and Rochester. And that's Zone 6. Is there... Okay, next question is there a target chit in here so I can mark the target zone of the raid? Clearly I have to go... Well, there's a nuclear target in here, but I doubt we're going to have a... I don't think we're going to have any kind of nuclear sorties coming at us for a while. Hold on. Alert radar. None of those, of course, are going to be helpful here. I didn't get buried in there. Looks like some of the chits I needed kind of walked off on me. That's moderately annoying, at least. Okay, those are all skills. I may try to organize this a little bit differently so I can ideally find what I need here. But I think I'll just use the other Saipan chit in here to mark off Zone 6. So I know that's what they're targeting. Alright, so the raid is moving toward Rochester in Zone 6. Zone 1, where the raid will move, we're not going to lift off yet. As the raid moves to Zone 2, we are, I think we're still not going to lift off yet. We'll let it go for Zone 3. We'll let it then move to Zone 3, and now we are going to lift off. Zone 4. We're going to loiter in. We're going to loiter in Zone 4. So that brings fuel back down here. Loitering will bring us down 1 unit of fuel. And now in Zone 5, where we are going to roll for interception, we will always have an interception in here. Unless we roll... Where's the interception? Oh, the interception chart's over here. So the only way we're not going to have an interception in zone 12 is in zone 5 is if we roll a 12 on 2d6. That'll be a random event. That's a 6, so we make contact with an HE-277. So we've got the we've got the bomber mat in shot for that already, thankfully. Let's see if we can find the... I'm going to leave that shit out for the time being. That's the ME-364. Now let's see if I can find the HE-277 shit. Oh, that was easy. So we'll see where we're approaching from. Same roll as we did before. That's an 8, so we're approaching from the tail, and we're approaching at medium altitude. So approach 8, medium altitude. Right, from long range, we're going to aim at the... Aiming at the airframe actually worked wonders for us last time, so let's run that strategy back from long range. We'll roll on the... So we're going to use the forward guns once again. 2d6 roll here. That's a 7, so 3 minus 1 is 2 hits. Since we are at long range. 1, 2. Let's see, that'll be 2d10 roll. That's a 1, that'll be an airframe. The first one is an airframe hit. Here we go. Damaged for an airframe hit, which we need 4 airframe hits to take an HE-277 out. And a 2 is another airframe hit. Okay. So now the bomber gets defensive fire, and it's got firepower 7. So we'll be rolling a 1d6 on 7. So since the first time we're going here, we're on the bomber defensive fire chart with a 1d6 for 7 firepower. That's a 1. So on 7 and a 1, that's a miss. And the bomber apparently can't shoot. So that was a second airframe. Bomber defensive fire is going to be a miss. So now we get to move into medium range this time. Actually, we'll move that into medium range. All right, we're going to stick with aiming at the airframe, especially since now we've inflicted 2 airframe hits, 2 more, and we take this bomber out. We'll take another shot with the 50 caliber forward guns, and we'll see what happens here. That's another 6 firepower. A 4 is a miss, so we whiff. Then for bomber defensive fire, it's got 7 firepower again. And now that we're at medium range, no modification on the hit. That's a 5, so now we're taking 3 hits. 1, 2, 3. Which brings us back to the fighter damage chart that we saw earlier, rolling these APA style again. .62 is a tail hook hit. Uh-oh. Let's see. I believe we call that a... So that's probably an arrestor hook hit. Which means our arrestor hook is damaged. Which probably makes landing harder. Tail hook, yep. +1 for a damaged hook. That's not good. Let's see what we get next. .36 is a controls hit. Here we go. So that's a controls hit, which means our agility is reduced by 1. And our last hit so we've got another +1 on controls damage for controls damage. And a 26 is another controls hit. That's a problem. We are in zone 5, so if we have to break off, but I think we're going to take another, I think we're going to take our last shot at close range. Which means now it's a +1 hit, but that goes both ways. Since we are in our home zone, we're going to take a, we might as well take a shot at it. Six firepower again. That's a 3, so we pick up a total of 2 hits. 1 + 1. And we were aiming at, we're going to stick with the airframe again. I do have to modify, I do have to announce that before I aim, but, well, before I fire, but we'll pretend I stuck with aiming at the airframe. 3 is an airframe and a gunner hit. I'm gambling that we'll be able to knock out the bomber before it gets a shot back at us, but we're going to find that out. I believe on the, let me take a look here and see. With the gunner hit, does it make it harder for them to fire back at us? Probably not. Let me see about bomber display mat. That's probably just going to be like, hey, here it is. Yep. Okay, but it doesn't completely tell me. Yeah, it doesn't. Okay, yeah, I think we just assume that we don't deal. I think we assume that it doesn't look like there's anything there about it not being harder all of a sudden. So we got one more hit on the bomber. That's a 1. That's actually another airframe hit, which will be enough to take out. This bomber. So we will nail that. And we can earn the Bronze Star multiple times, right? Yes. but we don't get an additional reward from that. And it doesn't look like the bomber gets to fire on us again, so we will turn and head for home at this point. We'll try to put this bird down. We'll roll for the weather, which is a 1d10, yes. Six is still good weather. And our landing roll is a 2d6, but we're plus 2 because we're plus more than that, aren't we? Yeah, we are plus. Is that controls hit per? Is that controls hit per? Or is that controls modifier per hit, or just the one? It looks like if it's been hit, we get plus 1. I imagine it would say, okay, yeah, it would say per. So plus 1 control hit, plus another plus 1 for a carrier landing, and plus one because our tail hook's out, so we're netting a plus 3 on the modifier for this hit, for this roll. 6 plus 3 is 9. That's still a good landing, even if it was rough going. Good weather, good landing. Okay, so we're all done there. Promotion mechanics. Promotion to the next highest rank. When do we roll for promotions? Oh, it looks like it's noted on the sorting log, which actually makes my life very easy. So we'll worry about promotion rolls at that point. We do need to. There's month stuff that needs to happen as well here. The research track at the bottom of A2. So it looks like after the final sortie, you're given 1 research point to allocate to one of the 4 areas on the track. So on the research track, we can allocate to advanced ground radar, improved raft and survival gear, fuel tank, improved fuel tanks, or the F-89 and the F-2H1. No contact replaced by intercept in zone 4. Water rescue DRM of -2 in addition to others. Fuel tanks receive a -1 DRM on B4. I think we're going to put a point into the... So let's go research. We're going to put a point into... There should be another 1 in here. Here we go. So we're given 1 research point. The current value or less is rolled. Okay. Let's go ahead and put that into advanced ground radar so we can modify it so we can replace no intercept rolls sooner. Okay, so after the final sortie, we're given 1 research point to allocate. So it looks like we allocate the research and then we roll. So if we roll a 1, we'll unlock advanced ground radar. Which that's a 3, so nothing doing there. Which means we'll be researching that, but we can then allocate points to that to increase our chances of success. So we'll call that no success. Alright, we are 40 minutes into the video. I think we can go for at least 1 more sortie here. So let me clear all of that out of the way. That was actually a pretty good sortie, all things considered. This will be our first sortie in May 1947. So yes, we'll do at least 1 more sortie in this video. And we'll see where they're coming after us. Or where they're going, I should say. 33. This time they're going after the shipyards in Newport News, Virginia. Zone 6. Oop. Okay, so we'll go ahead and mark that off as our target zone again. Zone 1, as the raid will move in. Well, actually, let me adjust everything. Let me get the bomber fully stocked up and all updated. Okay, we are all clear there. Actually, we'll put that there. So zone 1, we're not going to lift off. Zone 2, we're also not going to lift off yet. Zone 3, as the raid moves in, now we are going to lift off. Zone 4, we're going to loiter for a turn. So we move there and we loiter. So zone 4. Zone 5, now we get to roll for interception. We'll see what we've got coming at us. That's a 6. So we're in zone 5, which means we do get automatic contact since we are in zone 5. And we've got an HE-277 coming at us. Okay, so now we're back to the position chart. We've got the HE-277 in shot. Now we have to roll for the approach. Which, as usual, we'll get the D10 and the D6 ready for that. That's approach 4, and we'll be coming at it from medium altitude. So we're going to start there. So approach 4, medium altitude. All right, we'll start off with long range, and we'll aim at the airframe. We'll flip over one of our ammo chits. Right, HE-277. So now we're back on fighter damage to bombers or fighters, 6 firepower. That's a 6, so we inflict 2 minus 1 is 1 hit. Which means we'll have defensive fire from the bomber in a minute, but first we have to roll for an airframe hit. That's a 5, so we get a controls hit out of that. Controls on an HE-277, okay? So now we'll roll for defensive fire on the HE-277. It's got 7 defensive firepower. So that's a 1d6. That's a 4. That'll be a miss. That's very welcome for us. Now we'll close into medium range. And we'll stick with aiming at the airframe. Once again with 6 firepower. Eight is 3 hits this time. 2, 3. Rolling a D10 for hits, and we decided we were aiming at the airframe again. 4 is a random wing hit. Going to my logbook. So now we're rolling for a wing hit. 5 is another controls hit. We may be able to take this thing out with controls hits. We still have 2 more airframe hits to roll for here. So let's see what we do with this. Two is an airframe hit, which is not as great. And the last hit on the airframe on this HE-277. Eight is an engine on the port side. Grab our D6 so we can roll for that. Six is the port inboard engine. We'll get ready for defensive fire here. As I'll get a chit for the port inboard engine, and then we'll roll for defensive fire. That's 7 firepower, that's a 6, that's 4 hits, that's probably going to be bad for us. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So 4 hits coming in. That's at least mildly problematic, I would say. $66, uh-oh. Fuel tank hit. That's a problem. That's going to take a roll on our end. I believe... Let me just double check that, but I'm pretty sure fuel tank for us also takes a yes. Okay. Alright, so we've got a roll for the 2d6 there. That's a 5, so they're leaking, but we are still going to have to immediately land after combat's over. But we still have more hits to deal with. And I believe we can just break off any time, right? Let's see. Enemy disengagement. Maybe times when you'll want to disengage. Okay. As your action instead of firing. Okay, so we can break off, and we're probably going to have to here, but we've got 3 more hits that we have to roll for first. It's entirely possible we may get another fuel tank hit and have to bail out immediately. $41 is a radio hit. Uh-oh. Which makes our radio, I believe, makes water rescues a lot more difficult. Yes, water rescue rolls would be at +4. But I'm getting ahead of myself there. $22 is a port engine. We'll roll odds and evens for inboard and outboard. Once I get it noted in the log. That's going to be a port inboard engine hit. Port inboard engine. And one more hit. .31 is now a starboard engine is out. Oh, fun. And we'll roll that the same way. The starboard outboard engine is now out. Actually, I thought we just had... Oh, it looks like it's only the one engine that we've got here. So we have -2 speed on that, which means we do starboard. Actually, it looks like it's just the Pratt Whitney engine. Okay, actually we're marking off the wrong one there. Okay, so that's a problem for us. We will have to bail out. Actually, we get to try to land this thing. Since our fuel tanks are leaking. Are we considered to be in our base when we get... Are we considered in our base when we have suffered leaking fuel tanks? Okay. Yeah, I think we are going to have to... Looks like we are going to be classified as over water, so... Bailing out. Okay, so we are going to roll for the pilot on the parachute chart and apply wounds if we need to. So we're going to roll a... What is that, a 2D... That's not a 2d6 roll, is it? Yeah, that is a 2d6 roll on the parachute chart. So we want to see a... Okay, so here's a question. With the fuel tanks leaking, I don't think the aircraft would be considered to be on fire. If we would have taken a second fuel tank's hit, the aircraft definitely would have been on fire. Or if we would have rolled it a little worse a little higher on the... Yeah, so no. Leaking tanks, the craft is not considered to be on fire. The map has a strange anomaly in that it has Chicago on the banks of the James Bay. Yeah, Chicago I think is a little bit too far... Chicago I think is a little too far southeast looking at this. Instead of at the bottom of Lake Michigan. In fact, the Great Lakes... Well, yeah, actually the Great Lakes are completely missing now that you... Maybe there's a very... Let me zoom in on this. Maybe there's like a little bit of Lake Michigan showing up down here. But yeah, you really can't tell anything... Even from this angle that I'm looking at, where I'm trying to get as much where I'm looking at it as a normal map of the United States as I can... There really isn't much here of the Great Lakes that you can tell. Like I said, maybe a very small portion of Lake Michigan, but otherwise the rest of them are definitely not visible at all. Anyway, coming back to my bailout roll, let's see if we can get out of this crap. We want to see a low roll on this one. So of course we roll a 10, which means we are killed in action. So, bail out. Pilot is killed in action. Delightful. Well, that was a fairly short career in defending America, intercepting the Amerika Bombers. I do really like this game, though, all things considered. Definitely liking the narrative story that gets told in this game. And I've talked about this before. I think when I was a guest on the War Room back last year, I talked a little bit about how I tend to like having games that have the historic theme to them, but not necessarily the script, where I'm able to write my own story. So based on that narrative aspect, a game like Absolute War, the Russian front, the Eastern Front, 1941 to 45 from GMT, I actually did kind of like that in that regard. That game in the regard of being able to tell my own story. But that game was just a total mess. This one I really liked, though, because it's an alternate history kind of game, and one of my favorite authors is actually Harry Turtledove, and he does a lot with alternate history. My favorite series from Turtledove is actually a series that he does where the South wins the Civil War. They call it, what do they call it in there? The War of Secession, I think it is. And then the story takes you, it starts off with, what's the first book in there? It's not the Guns of the South, because the Guns of the South is an alternate timeline where Gettysburg's happened, and the South is completely broken until these guys from the future in an organization called America Will Break come back to the Confederate States back in 1864 and bring them the AK-47, which lets them turn the tide against the Union, and they win the war that way. Whereas Turtledove's series is set in the American Civil War being won in 1862, and the story takes you from then. And the initial it kind of skips a little bit over the growing pains of the Confederate States, is what that series does. But it takes you through, it kind of picks back up in World War I after like 30 some odd years. Actually, it's probably more than that. There's actually, what is it called? How Few Remain, I think that's the name of the book. Where it's essentially the Mexican War, where the Confederates are going to add Sonora and Chihuahua to the Confederate States. The U.S. go to war and get humiliated again, and at the end of that book, the U.S. actually becomes all buddy-buddy with Germany at that point, and then it follows the story basically takes us from World War I all the way through World War II, and it's almost like the Confederate States essentially become the Nazi Germany of that world, where now you've got the... Well, I'm getting a little bit spoilerific, but I'm not going to get too spoilerific because it's actually a great series of books. So I'm not going to get spoilerific if you haven't read them already. Being in Canada can say that Hudson Bay and James Bay are accurately depicted, but no major cities along those frigid waters. No roads from there to the rest of Canada. Are you talking about the map or about the Turtledove series there, William? Welcome in, by the way. I'm kind of rambling a little bit, and I'm doing a little bit of cleanup, because while we're done with defending America, intercepting the Amerika Bombers, we're not quite done yet on the night, because I just got a delivery in from Noble Knight earlier this afternoon that we're going to go ahead and crack on the channel. So I'm just doing a little bit of cleanup so I can get ready for that. Map for this game. Okay. I was just curious. I know I kind of started rambling a little bit about Harry Turtledove when I was talking about alternate history stuff and kind of liking that about this world of games. Oh! Haha. Found the target zone shit I was looking for earlier so I could mark the target off. I don't know how it ended up. I might have misplaced it from my last time playing this game, and that's why I couldn't find it. But we got that all sorted out now. Okay, that's back in the box. And now let's turn our attention to this delivery from Noble Knight Games. I don't know how familiar you are with Noble Knight, but they're actually a pretty big game store in the U.S. I actually live a couple hours away from them where I could very easily drive over there given enough time. So we're going to crack this delivery open and see what I got in here. Once I get the knife in here. Maps puts Chicago in northern Ontario, Canada, north of even Sudbury. Yeah, no. And being right in between Chicago and Milwaukee, where I live, that is definitely a load of nonsense. Closing the knife carefully, because I have had problems with that in the past. We're, of course, greeted by our usual void fill. That can go away. And the first thing we're greeted by in here is a copy of Gateways of Terror, 3 Evenings of Nightmare for Call of Cthulhu. I've actually been starting to get back into... I've been starting to get into more solo RPGs. You might have... Earlier this month, I actually did a freeform adventure of Call of Cthulhu that I really enjoyed, using the Solo Investigator's Handbook, which is available off of DriveThruRPG. So I wanted to pick up some more pre-written adventures that I could try with that. So maybe I can potentially add that to the channel as well. And what do we have? Oh, looks like that's just a backboard that they were using to back the book. Okay. This might have been my copy of the book, actually, but there's Gateways to Terror. 3 adventures in here that we won't go through. These are actually 3 short play scenarios. So this would be perfect for me to do some testing with the Solo Investigator's Handbook and a pre-written adventure to see how those interact. Next in here, we're greeted by another set of Call of Cthulhu adventures. This one is Doors to Darkness. 5 scenarios for beginning keepers, also for Call of Cthulhu. Doors to Darkness provides 5 scenarios written especially for beginning keepers and players of Call of Cthulhu. Here you will find horror, mystery, investigation, ghastly monsters, strange magics, and forgotten secrets, as well as plenty of advice about how to run the adventures for best effect. We'll just give it a quick thumb through. Very nice. We've got all the handouts. I'm lucky if I have to order anything from Noble Knight, pay heavy mail and custom charges. Well, I've done my fair share of international ordering, and I can tell, and I know that's no fun, having to pay for international shipping. But like I said, I live a couple hours away from Noble Knight, but I don't have time to drive out there during the year. Usually I try to make at least one trip out to Noble Knight in December, when I have a lot of PTO off from work during the year. And the last thing we're greeted by in here is a special edition of Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel, which actually looks pretty slick. Let me get it out of this bag. That looks like a foil cover now that I'm looking at it. That looks like it is a foil cover for that. Very nice. I'm trying to protect from spoilers as much as I can. Trying to see if this is I believe this is a 5e book. Let me look. It looks like it... I think this is a 5e book. Let me see what the copyright is on this. First printing June 2022. So I'm pretty sure this is a... it's not... Copyright 2022. So I'm thinking this was advertised as a 5e book. So that's what I'm going to trust it as being. It doesn't have the... It doesn't, of course, doesn't have the copyright on here, but like I said, I'm rambling, but I'm pretty sure this is a 5e book. So very nice. And that will do it for this playthrough of Defending America, Intercepting the Amerika Bombers. Got a lot of great stuff coming up on the channel. Tomorrow night, we're going to be starting the 1972 playoffs. We're going to be starting the playoffs in my 1972 NFL season replay in Momentum Football. Here are the current playoff brackets for that. So we'll go through this in more detail tomorrow night, but we will be starting in the NFC as the 3-seeded San Francisco 49ers will be hosting the 6-seeded Minnesota Vikings in a rematch of Week 14, where the Vikings won their way into the playoffs. Saturday, Mystical Munchies will continue out of the official Catan cookbook with the entree, Harbor Masters Fish and Chips. Wednesday next week, we'll be playing... Actually, before we get to that, Sunday we'll be playing 5 Parsecs from Home, which is a space-based war RPG, single solo-player war game RPG. Then Wednesday next week, we'll have yet another air war game as we debut Tally Ho. Or no, we're not debuting Tally Ho. Next week, we're debuting SOE Lysander from Historic Wings on the channel. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.